So this is going to be a show about me. I am very old and I have a very interesting backstory and history of how I came to be. Oh yeah. I am also a camera.
Hi, I'm Stan Cook. The DeJur 8mm camera, manufactured 1948 from the company of Harry and Ralph DeJur, which were brothers who ran the company from 1920s to the 1970s. And then they sold off the company. What they manufactured were cine equipment, film equipment. They got into photographic supplies, and they were well known for their exposure meters. First we'll talk about what is 88. 88 is a film type, and these cameras come with actual film that you had to spool. And this is a 88 film, so you got a 25-foot spool of film, and what you did was you put it on the feed, you thread it through the machine, and you put it on the take up, and then once you've shot this, and there's a counter on the other side, you would take it out, flip it, and then you'd shoot the other half. So what essentially you're doing is you're splitting the film in half, and they would do that at the company. Okay, you send it off to Kodak or your local drugstore, and they would send it to Kodak, and they would split that and splice it together. You got about 50 feet of footage, which is about 4 minutes of time. Okay, the system is spring wound, means no batteries or no power supply. You just use your muscle. You turn it. There's a spring inside that will gather up all of your energy you're putting into the spring, and it releases it, and there's a governor to regulate the amount of speed, and you can hear that. You probably got about 30 seconds worth of film footage going through it. So you were constantly cranking it up, going back to your scene, depressing the release, and then you make your home movies. Okay? Now the person that had this was probably a little more technical in nature than some of the other people in your family, and so there were some things you had to kind of know about it. This is relatively quiet for a spring wound camera, but the interesting thing about this is the 3-lens turret system. Zoom lenses didn't really become popular with the mainstream until the 1960s. This is a 1948 camera, so to get the different views, like a telephoto view, you would have to slide the lens into place. If you were going from telephoto to a standard or normal lens, here again you'd have to switch it over to that lens. And you also had a wide angle lens. So essentially you have what we call a zoom lens, but it's on a turret system, and you had to rotate it. Okay, so you didn't have any really smooth shots as far as what we're used to today with the zooms going in and out. But I really like the lens turret system. It's kind of neat to look at, and I use these mainly for just novelty. I don't use any of these anymore, although all of the ones that I have, probably 80% of them could still work today. The person in your family that was using this would have to know something about f-stops. And the f-stops is just a number designation for the size of the opening of the aperture on your lenses. Okay, so what would happen here is you would have, these lenses are fixed mount, so you have actually the apertures behind the lens, and when you rotate this ring, you can go anywhere from f16, which is you close down for very bright situations, to all the way open to 1.8 to let more light in. Now, as far as the the amount of light you needed tons of light for a camera like this, because at the time that this was manufactured, you had ranges from a speed of 10 to speed of 40. So that's pretty slow. So you would have to have studio lights. If you were inside, you'd have to have really hot lights. If you were outside, you had to make sure that it was a bright day so you can get some images on here. So another interesting thing about this is if you rotate this ring a little further, out pops a exposure meter. Okay, and this exposure meter is actually still working, believe it or not. It becomes automatic, what they say, and so your aperture is controlled by the camera, so you don't have to worry about dialing it in. So here it's reading here. In the viewfinder, you actually have a little dial to the side that will put up 16 or 11 or 8 or 2.8 or 1.8 that tells you kind of what you're shooting at. You do have a built-in daylight filter where you can flip this up so that you can match different color film. If you had outside or indoor film, you can switch it. You have a counter on the side to tell you how much film you have left in the camera before you need to flip it. And then on the back, probably the least thing I like about these cameras is the very small viewfinder. Now, if you have bad eyes like I do, all you're basically doing is pointing and shooting. You're not getting any focus because they're fixed focus cameras, and what they usually have is about 2 feet to infinity is what they're set at. Maybe the wide angle lens is a little bit closer. You can get some stuff, but you would have to run a couple rolls of film to test that out, and that could be time consuming and also could be expensive because you would have to send this off to get processed and then make a work print, unless you were using reversal stock, which a lot of people were. Talking about the lens turret system again. All right, because the lens, when it's seated in front of the shutter, this is the position that you're actually in. If you notice, the viewfinder's over to the right. So you have a parallax view that you have to compensate for. That's another thing you would have to do for testing, because when you were looking inside here, what you're lining it up, actually the lens is over to the left a little bit and down. So you would have to make some adjustments. So mainly a lot of people would focus on wide shots. Okay, they weren't getting too close on things because you didn't know what you were getting until you came back from the drugstore and you put it on your projector. So this is the custom Electra, a neat little camera from the 1940s. Thanks for joining me and taking a look at the DeJur 8mm movie camera. Thanks for watching. Join us again next time.